Uh, so before we get started, I'm curious if any of you were able to gather any of the materials that we could use for this class. And it's okay if you didn't, but we could use some blank or even, lined paper, some markers. Put a thumbs up if you have paper. Thumbs up if you have markers. Awesome. Thumbs up, this is the hard one. If you have a water bottle, a squirter bottle with water. Thumbs down, no. All right, Max does. Benjamin. Aspen, do you have water?
Rachel's gonna go get some.
Cool.
She found one. We have a squirted bottle.
Cool.
Awesome. It's like giant.
Oh, so you'll have a giant experiment. Whoa. Yeah. All right. And then our last thing is maybe a baking sheet or some kind of tray to put your paper in, just so you don't get water all over. Okay. And if you don't have that stuff, it's totally fine, because this is an activity you could do again later. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Oh, there's lots of stuff up there. Where are we? Sorry, give me a second here. I have too many windows open. Is this gonna be it? Tell me if you see it. Okay, do you see my watershed stories, watershed journey, water's journey? Okay. Okay, so let's get started here. Oh. So my name is Erin Blaze, and I work for the Soil and Water Conservation District, your local Soil and Water Conservation District. And I run a few programs that do education about water resources, which is really fun. We come into schools and talk to kids about where their water comes from, where their drinking water comes from, where it might go to after it's used, what happens to storm water. So we do a lot of education around water. But the soil and water conservation districts, they exist all across our country, and they do things like help protect our natural resources. They help farmers keep their soil healthy. So soil health is a really important part of being able to grow food and, sustain all the people that depend on that food. Here in New Mexico, we work really hard to keep landowners, keep their properties safe from fire. So a lot of people that live in like the mountains, the East Mountains, live in the forest, right? So we help them do thinning on their land, which means they cut down trees to help make sure that the fire, if a fire came through, it didn't catch everything on fire. A very dense forest is a fire hazard. And like I said, we do education with the public about impacts of pollution, especially in water. That's a picture of me and my little 4-year-old over by the Jemez River. And I have, like you've met before, Eli here, who's my stepson, who's 11. So I'd really love for us to be able to talk back and forth during this class today and kind of, brainstorm ideas, so it's not just me talking at you the whole time. So we're just going to kind of maybe name a few things of where we think water is. It's pretty beautiful picture here, so I'm giving you a little hint. We definitely know there's water stored up in glaciers, right? But maybe think locally, like where are some places that you know where water is nearby you? Any hands? Looks like Eli had.
I guess
Okay, what did you say again?
Where is water around us right now? Can you name place where there's water in Albuquerque?
Well, the river by church, the clouds, and
Awesome.
and a lot of other places.
And when snow
Like
melts,
ponds,
water
like ponds or
Is that McKenna?
stuff.
snow.
Snow, right? Totally. There's
like
probably
the-
still some snow melting up in the higher mountain areas, like in the Colorado mountains and the Rockies.
Yeah, there's snow there, and I think what it does is it melts, and then the water comes down here.
Awesome. Good thinking about water. Cool. So yeah, we have water locally. I love that you mentioned clouds, right? Because water isn't just the water that's on the ground, right? It's in a process. And I'm sure a lot of you probably have learned a little bit about the water cycle, right? That, you know, if water is maybe down in a river or a lake, that eventually there's some evaporation, water goes up into the clouds, it condenses, it eventually might fall down as rain and kind of repeats that cycle.
And clouds are made of water.
Totally. And even trees and plants are kind of losing a little bit of water to the atmosphere as well. So that's a cool word, big word. Evapotranspiration. Anyone want to say that? Evapotranspiration. So, but that's not just where water is, right? It is in that cycle, but it's also all around us as well. And so today we're going to talk about watersheds. Ooh, has anyone heard that word before? Nice. You know, this is a tricky word, and I will admit, even me, I did not know what this word really meant until I was in college. Like, it wasn't really talked about a lot for me when I was a youth in school. And so there's even adults that don't know what this word is, but it's something that's really common to all of us. The whole world is a watershed, which we're going to watch a quick video in a second here. But basically, the definition of a watershed is an area of land that drains to the same body of water, like a lake, river, or stream. So to help us really better understand that, I have this awesome video that I love, and we're going to watch it. It's about a minute long, okay?
What is a watershed? Is it a shed that holds water? Nah, try again. A watershed is all of the land that drains into the same location or body of water. People tend to think only of water bodies such as rivers, lakes, and wetlands as being part of their watershed. However, any land, whether it is park, farm, forest, school parking lot, and even the soil we build our homes on is also included. Think of a watershed as a funnel, collecting all the water within a specific area and draining into the nearest body of water. Drop by drop, water is channeled into soil, groundwater, creeks and streams, making its way to larger rivers and eventually the ocean. Everyone in the world lives in a watershed. Watersheds know no political borders, whether local, national, or international. Our environment, our economy, and our society all depend on a healthy watershed.
Okay. Did that make sense to everybody a little bit about what a watershed is? We're going to talk more about that, but kind of a cool video. And I like the guy's accent. I think he's Australian. So the picture that is up on your screen now is a poster that is, it's a watershed poster for our area. So maybe you might recognize this a little bit. I don't know if you can see my mouse when I do this, but can you see this area? Anyone know what that area might be?
You guys can raise your hands if you want to answer her question, and then I can unmute you.
Does anyone think it's where we live? Some of us might be in, Aspen?
I think it's where we live.
Like Albuquerque? Are you all in Albuquerque?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Albuquerque, we have the Sandia Mountains, the river that runs through. Who can name the river that we live nearby? Ooh, Benjamin. Benjamin, do you know?
Benjamin, can you ask your mommy to help you unmute you, babe?
Oh, he's muted.
Yeah, I think they muted on their side. Let's
I
go
can
ahead.
I can
Oh.
even mute myself.
Wow.
Oh, there you go, buddy.
Do you know the name of the river?
Rio Grande River.
Yes, good job. So we have the river, and then Rio Rancho over here. And what else do you guys see in this picture besides the city? Oh,
Let's see. The Joneses.
Farmland.
I heard farmland. Awesome. Farmland, maybe some people doing some activities. Does anyone see any animals? Yeah?
Jet, go ahead.
I see 2 birds on the cactus, and then I see some birds in the top left.
Yeah. So we see some wild animals and even maybe some pets. Eli.
I see a roadrunner. I think they're geese. And I think the bird on the top of the cactus is a Tweety bird. I'm not so sure. I'll have to look it up in my bird book.
Awesome. I don't know exactly what it is either, but I think you're right about the roadrunner and the geese. So when we think about a watershed, it's again, like I said. Oh, Aspen, did you want to share?
I see a dog.
Dog, yes. That's an important one for our discussion. So the watershed, if we're looking at this picture, is this whole area, right? If it's to rain on or snow on the Sandia Mountains, since water runs downhill, it eventually is going to go towards the river, right? So that whole area is a watershed. And so what we're just naming are all the things that are dependent on our watershed, right? The people, the wildlife, there's farmers, pets even, right? We all need water to survive. So we're all in this together. Did you want to add something, Eli?
I'm not sure. It's probably there, but I think I see it's probably a bridge, but it might be a beaver lodge. Beavers are a really big part of nature. They help a lot of animals.
Awesome. They do. They help build wetlands, and beavers are amazing. Good
If
point.
we didn't have beavers, there'd be less water, and we'd probably be flooded right now.
Right. I think beavers, they play a really important part of our ecosystem, and it's too bad we don't have as many as our country used to be full of beavers. Okay, so we're gonna go to this next. I'm always excited to see. Oh yeah. So here's another little model to think about watersheds, because a lot of times we think about the top of the earth, but we don't always think about below it. Correct? So this picture, what do you see some stuff below the earth here? Some of that water going underground. So this is kind of pointing out an aquifer. Has anyone heard of an aquifer before? It's a weird word, aquifer. And that, an aquifer is an underground layer of rock that holds groundwater. So below us in Albuquerque and Rio Rancho areas, there is an aquifer. It's underground source of water, and we do use a little bit of that water for our own drinking water, along with water that we get from the Rio Grande. So we're drinking both river water that's been cleaned and treated and water that's pumped up from under us. So an interesting story is that when people first came to Albuquerque and started to really develop the city in the 1900s, the mid 1900s, they thought that there was a giant aquifer under us, like the size of a Lake Michigan or something, right? So this picture that you're looking at is the Rio Grande. You can see the little river. It's like a cross section that looks under the earth. So we thought there was so much water under us that we could build golf courses and have lawns and pools and just use as much water as we want, even though we live in the desert, because the desert doesn't get a lot of rain, right? So this is what we thought we had, but this is what we really have. So do you see this, just this little area of water? That's what's actually under us compared to this huge giant thing. It's like thinking that you have a Olympic-sized swimming pool of water, but you really only have a bathtub. So what do you do you think that that might have changed how people had to behave and the way that they lived here in Albuquerque? Do you think they had to change maybe how they use water? I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, so there's a lot of education today to help people understand that we can't just use as much as we want, because we don't really have that much to begin with. Okay, so that was a little bit about the aquifer, which is water that is underground. So now we get to do our little experiment and kind of create our own watershed or watersheds. So you have your materials, okay, and we're gonna just start with a piece of paper. So my assistant here will hold up this paper and we're gonna do a little magic trick. We're gonna take this paper, which is flat, and turn it into a piece of land. So the way you're gonna do that is you're gonna do one big crumple. So smash your paper together. And then open it back up. There you go. Do you need a minute to catch up?
I need a notebook. I mean, I have one.
Can you tear a piece of paper out?
I have a notebook.
Can you tear a piece of paper out of it?
I can, but it's colored all.
That's okay.
All of the pages are colored, so I might just tear one out.
Okay.
Rachel's not very happy if I tear these out.
Uh-oh. Well, you're doing a good job, though.
I'm going to tear just a small piece of it out.
All right. So who has their crumpled piece of paper? And now take a look at what you have. Does it kind of look like land does? Do you see maybe some mountains on it? So when we talk about land, sometimes we talk about ridges, which are high points, and valleys, which are low points, which are deep down, right? So a ridge would be like on the top of a mountain. If you look up at the Sandias at the top, that's a really big ridge. Or a ridge could be like a tiny part of a hill. And then valleys are the lower parts. So what we're gonna do is take our marker, assistant, you can work behind us on the table. And we're gonna trace along the ridges, the high points of your paper.
Like this.
So yeah, so he's just tracing along that ridge So we're gonna do that along all the ridges that we find until we get basically to see almost like this piece of paper here on my right. Give you a little bit of time here. And once you feel like you're done, you can show us your cool mountains with ridges. Aspen, I think you got to put some marker on your ridges on the
No,
high point.
I don't have marker. I only have pencil.
Okay, you could trace with pencil.
I did.
Oh, okay. It was probably hard to see then. If you have any kind of marker, it's going to help with the spraying part. Ooh, nice.
There's pink and yellow and green.
Like Benjamin's really getting into the right position.
I saw. Good job, buddy. Oh, Aspen's trying to show.
I think you got it. Aspen, can I see the other side of your paper?
There's just colors on it.
But is it marker? That'll be cool.
Pencil. This is marker.
Got it.
Stuff, and then this is pencil and crayon.
I don't.
It looks like Jet is also trying to show his.
Jet, thank you, Jet. Let's see. All right. Looks like you might have a couple more ridges that you could put marker on if you want to. So
Max. Oh, Max is showing his too. Oh, yours looks good. Good job, Max. That looks great.
okay. So the next thing we're gonna do. Are you all feeling ready? Okay.
No, the Jonas is down here. Look like he's trying to. Are you all done, buddy?
No.
No. Just a few more minutes maybe for him.
Yeah. So once you are starting to feel ready, you're going to want to put it in your pan or your tray to kind of protect water from going everywhere. So we've got ours. You can put it in there.
Okay, so this is our tray, our panish thingy, and then we put our paper inside,
Cool.
like that.
All right, so our next piece is going to be to make it rain essentially on our land so that we can see what happens, how that water moves across the land when it rains. So you're going to take your spray bottle and you're going to want to spray kind of directly overhead. You want to do this?
Yeah, like, can you see, like this?
Yeah. And do maybe 5 to 10 sprays kind of all over. You're wanting to get the marker to color to bleed a little bit. And so at this point, you're not going to want to lift it up to show us because you want to let it sit flat so that you can watch the water pool in certain areas. So this is the experiment for me, is seeing how this works for you all. online. So I wonder if we could unmute them and just kind of let
Yeah,
some of the.
I'll unmute them all. Aspen,
Was there a question?
Aspen, if you if
I was
Aspen,
just asking my dad for something.
if you hold the bottle straight up, you'll be able to spray it better. Don't tilt the spray bottle. There you go.
Yeah, you sometimes got to get the water in there first before you can. Oh, I hear spraying. So what are some things that we saw? I have a picture here. It's not the best one, the big picture on my screen of what happened when I sprayed.
Hello?
You're unmuted. You can stay unmuted, guys, for a little bit.
I was looking up the bird, and it might have been a small American kestrel.
Kestrel?
It might have been a small American kestrel, but I'm not so sure yet. I'm still looking it up.
Awesome. You know, I want to say I think you might be right, because I think kestrels like to perch up on not super high points. Like you can often see them on the sides of highways on fence posts. So that would be a good place for it.
It's got a small little map. It shows mostly in the United States. So it was probably an American kestrel.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for checking that out.
Good job, Eli.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone for their watershed experiment? Did anyone notice where the water went?
That should be good.
The pink stuff.
That's perfect, McKenna.
Maybe we have to do one at a time. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's okay. I'll mute him back. So I think Jet, you can go ahead and go. You're the only one unmuted, babe, or buddy. Sorry.
Well, mine just kind of became flat and everything went to the middle.
No, that happens. Well, could you imagine what that might represent?
Yeah.
Is there ever a rainstorm that washes away land?
Yeah, there's plenty of rainstorms that wash away land all the time.
So maybe you created a torrential downpour.
Yeah, maybe I created a hurricane or a tsunami. Yeah.
You wiped everything out. Did anyone get anything that looked like a river or a lake?
Raise your hand and I can unmute you. Benjamin, go ahead and unmute. There you go, bud. Aspen, I'll get you just after Benjamin. Benjamin, it's your turn to talk, buddy.
What did you notice, Benjamin?
I noticed that on the river it river.
Cool. Thank you, Benjamin. Aspen?
I saw a river.
Nice. Let me ask you, if you look, all of you, if you look along the ridges where you made your line, do you notice even just little tiny lines that kind of come off the top?
Yeah.
Some of those. So, and you can maybe kind of see on my screen that, you know, when water hits the top of a mountain, often it might run down, make little streams until it makes a really big stream. We call those tributaries. And it also kind of, to me, represents how erosion works. You guys familiar with erosion? Give me a thumbs up if anyone knows what erosion is. All right, do you want to share, Jet? Could you describe erosion?
Erosion is when water erodes away rock or other stuff making something. Like I've seen it like Grand Canyon, that was water eroding into the rock, eroding it away, turning it into a canyon.
Awesome. Yeah. So when it's usually wind or water kind of moves the land and shapes it, right? And makes stuff go down a little bit, like you're kind of talking about. That's awesome. The Grand Canyon is such a good example. That's a millions of years of erosion, right? That made that happen. Eli?
We were kind of playing in the water when our friend was over, and no one was really paying attention to the hose that was on, and it just set for a while, and and the water just kind of carved like this river.
Ooh.
It looked really cool.
Awesome.
It was just like a little river. It was like a big river with the hose powering all the water.
Well, I'm glad you turned that into a learning experience when the hose was left on. Okay, so we're gonna move forward a little bit because what I want us to
the
think about.
The Jonases is raising his hand down here.
Sorry. I don't see him on my
I
screen.
know. I think he might be hidden. There you go, bud.
Playing with the hose in like a corner of the yard, and I had like made this giant puddle, and I looked over and then I picked up some mud, and it was super fine, and I was like, and I looked over, and it had like carved a big like stream, and there was a whole bunch of rocks stuck to the side, and I was like, so that's where all those rocks went, because like the mud I was standing in was so fine.
Interesting.
And like all the rocks had like collected on the side of the stream. All the rocks had like collected on the side.
That's really cool. So it sounds like you guys are starting to notice that there's many watersheds in your backyard, right? We could think of a watershed as even a small little area. You might even say your house or where you live is a watershed because there's a high point, right, where water hits when it rains, and then it comes down and maybe goes through your yard a certain way, and you might be able to pick up how things erode when it rains. We just had a big rainstorm, is it 2 weeks ago, that big rainstorm where lots of water came down. So anytime it rains like that, you should go outside and look at your house, and you can notice what you guys are talking about how water moves across the land. Okay, Aspen, we're gonna do your comment last, and then we're gonna move to the next part, okay?
When I was playing with the hose with my dog Lily, she was like biting the water, and then puddles formed on the grass.
Yeah.
And mud and the grass just like rode it away.
That's a great intro to our next part, Aspen, so thank you. So this picture that we're looking at now is, actually need a time check, okay, is, it's something called the Rolling River, which is a model of a watershed that we use at the district to do public education. And I want us to think a little bit about what we just made was a watershed, but this is just land, right? But where we live, there's not just land, there's people and animals, right? So we're gonna think a little bit about what exists in our watershed, what other things. And I really wanna point out what Aspen was just talking about when he said there was puddles on the grass. Well, where does that water eventually go when it's on grass? Jet?
It eventually goes into the soil, and plants and worms, stuff that live in underground, get water, nutrients.
Awesome. Cool. So the water will seep into the ground, right? When it's on grass. So
Yep.
what happens when there's a puddle on concrete?
Nothing really, but eventually it will erode away after a very, very long time.
Okay, I
But
like
by
your,
that time, it probably evaporated.
nice. There we go, right? So water, if you look at your house, right, or your street where you live, when it rains, water either turns into puddles that eventually evaporate, or it might flow down the street. Correct? Right? That's what we normally see. So we're talking about our permeable and impermeable surfaces, which are big fancy words for talking about when a surface is permeable. That means that the, like grass or sand, the water will seep back down into the earth and go back maybe into that aquifer that we learned about. But if it's on concrete, it's either going to evaporate and where it's not going to get to the plants in the soil, or it's going to run down the street and eventually go through the stormwater drains and end up at the river. So that's what we're gonna do in our next experiment. So if we're looking at this picture, this is another kind of shot of Albuquerque, essentially our watershed area, right? What are some things that we see here?
Mom!
I know that world. What?
True.
Yeah. Do you? So we're gonna name a few things. Maybe we could raise hands. I'm gonna name something to start. Maybe Eli, do you want to name something that you see in this picture? Yeah.
I see the sandias in the background, and when water hits the sandias, it'll split it off, and it'll either go to one side of the mountains or the other. And if it comes more towards Albuquerque, then the water will come down the sandias, or it'll go back inside the earth.
Good job, my little watershed warrior here.
Good job, Eli.
Well, I'll just name that I see buildings. Does anyone else want to go? Name something that you raise your hand. Name something.
Raise your hand. Aspen.
I see trees.
Cool. So we have trees, buildings, mountains.
Benjamin.
I was going to do trees too.
Awesome. Does anyone see the big body of water down at the bottom? The river? Cool. How about parking lots? It might be hard to see, but can you imagine that there's some parking lots in there? And if there's parking lots, there's probably what else? I saw, I can lip read.
Jet.
Did you say cars? Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Definitely cars.
People.
I think there might even be some factories in the area where we live that could be in this picture. So we are going to take our experiment to the next level. See what my next slide is. Okay, and we're going to think about what happens to water when it moves across places like cities where there's neighborhoods or factories, maybe parks, right? Grass, golf courses. And there might even be some farms because we have farms in our city as well, little urban farms. So we're not just thinking about what happens to water when it moves across the land, but we're also thinking about what it might take with it when it moves across a city. So has anyone, when you're out driving around with your parents or your walking around the city, does anyone ever see trash on the ground? That happens, right? Maybe at your schools, have you ever seen trash on the ground there? Yeah, it happens too. What about when you're walking around your maybe a park and you smell something stinky and you're like, oh, somebody forgot to clean up their dog poop, right? Is that sometimes on the ground in our city? Yeah. So what do you think happens when it rains and water moves across our city and there's all those things on the ground, right? There's cars driving around and cars might leak oil. There's people with dogs who don't clean up after them. Jet, do you want to tell us what your thoughts are?
It gets into the soil and the dirt, and it kills the plants and animals and things that are living in that area.
Yeah, eventually, right? Like if water's moving across the land and it might mix with some of that dog poop or car oil, wherever that water goes, it's not going to be very helpful.
Or it might wash into a river, and there might be some plastic or something.
Have you guys ever been down at the Rio Grande and seen like a plastic water bottle floating down? Yeah, so here in Albuquerque, when it rains and that water goes across the land, it eventually can end up in the river because it's not cleaned really before it goes back into the river. Now in our houses, when we use water from the drains, you know, that goes back down to the drains after we use it, that water is cleaned. But any water that's on the pavement is not really cleaned before it hits the river eventually, because it's a hard thing to do. Okay, so for our next little experiment, I'm gonna give you this picture to give you some ideas. We're gonna take our paper, and this time you get to draw a little city on your paper. And this is your choice. You can draw it however you want to draw it. You might want to put some roads on there, use a bunch of different colors. Let's see, I might have.
I am paper face.
Yeah. This is a paper face. So you want to draw a quick little city? You guys have like 2 minutes to draw oh, and I need my power cord. So I'm gonna get my power cord and you guys can draw your city.
When you guys are done, you can just give a thumbs up so we know who is done and who is still working. Thank you, Aspen.
You know, you don't probably get a lot of chances to draw poop, but I would say you can put little specks of poop all over your city because there are a lot of dogs in Albuquerque and not everybody always cleans up after them. Maybe you like to draw cars. You could draw a car on there. Maybe some farmland. And then when you are starting to feel finished, we probably have like just a little bit longer, you can show us your artwork. You draw like a factory on there, or sure.
Ooh, good job, Aspen.
It was quick.
Right. We've got one
Ooh,
little
good job.
the river, some trees, a big old road.
We put a whole bunch of like junk in the river or so to it's hard to see, but there.
Oh, we can see it. Good job, Eli.
Thanks.
Anyone else want to show us their city?
Raise your hand and I can unmute you so that you can talk. I don't see. Eli and Easton, do you guys, oh, Jet's ready. Jet, go ahead.
This is my city. There's a road, a railway, a track, 2 buildings, a river going across the forest, and the
Awesome.
road.
Great job.
Yeah, you did a lot in that short amount of time.
Good job.
About Benjamin, or who else is on here?
The
Oh,
Joneses or Eli and Kenna.
hi, Steve.
Oh, yes. Hi, Steve. Steve Glass.
Steve is the board director of Ciudad Soil and Water Conservation District.
Oh, great. Thank you for joining, Steve.
My
Steven
pleasure.
Glass.
I
Oh, thank
wouldn't have
you.
missed it.
Great. Aaron's doing a great job.
I have seen that. I'm gathering tips about a Presbyterian presentation I have to do in a little while.
Ah.
I thought I'd see what I could glean, and I'm impressed. Aaron, you're rocking this.
Oh, thanks.
Good job, Aaron.
All right, Max, or I can't see the name on everyone.
So we have the Joneses, Max, or Eli and McKenna, and Benjamin, I believe, who haven't. Okay, Max is ready. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Max.
There's a lot of farmland right here, and we have some business and a parking lot right or somewhere around here. And then some more farmland, and then an Easter egg
Cool.
Oh, cool.
with a cow, some more business, a river, some more houses, and a police station.
Cool.
Great job, Max.
All right,
Okay,
cool.
the Joneses.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll get you next, Eli. I can see you. There you go, buddy.
This is mine. I put a farmland up here. I'm gonna jump and see it. People are just tossing their banana. People are just tossing their banana peels all over the streets down here.
Or are they?
Oh, shame on them.
I know everyone's
They're
gonna
just
split.
tossing their banana peels.
I know. Good
And
job. That was
here, I had put enough water to make or it looks something like the Rio Grande. It doesn't look exactly like the Rio Grande, but I just got it to look like the Rio Grande.
Awesome. Okay, well, so we're gonna oh wait, we have Eli. Oh, he has a message.
oh, okay. Okay, go ahead, Eli.
Wait, what was it? I didn't see it.
It's flipped when you.
Oh, has Benjamin shown?
Where's Benjamin? Nope.
Okay.
Benjamin, you want to hold up your picture for us?
And houses.
What?
With trees and
Could you maybe hold it closer so we can see?
There you go.
mine.
Nice. A river maybe, and some roads and some houses.
She's not talking about you.
My
So we're gonna pause on sharing, and we're gonna do the same experiment real quick because we don't have a lot of time left together, but I want us to get through to this last part, which is to think about, is where we live flat? No, right? So we have to turn it. Go ahead and turn your city into land. So you're gonna crumple
Wait,
it.
can you fold it? How it look good? Kind
No, just crumple it.
of? Okay.
Just crumple it. Show what you're doing. We're gonna crumple again.
Crumple it and then.
Yeah, here's my city. Crumpled. You don't want to flatten it.
All right.
You want to let it kind of be that crumpled land, because land has a lot of ups and downs, ridges and valleys that the water's moving across. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it back into our tin.
And squirt.
And make it rain on that city. And we're going to, hold on. We're going to observe what happens to the water when it rains. What color does the water become? Where does it go? So if you have your spray bottle, go ahead and spray it up. Okay, so I'm going to show you what happened to mine when I did that. So if we can imagine that those colors in the water represent some of that pollution that is on the ground, where does all that pollution end up? For me, there was some watery pollution that ended up in the neighborhood because there was this big factory nearby, and some of that was from the roads. There was also a big amount of pollution that ended up at the school from the nearby stores and roads, from all the cars. So does anyone want to share what they saw on their city when it rained?
Most of the polluted water actually ended up near the corporate businesses.
Oh. Payback, huh?
Good job, Max. The Joneses. Go ahead, buddy.
Mine? Well, quite all it did was, anyhow, it just got a lot more pollution after I had the roads. The pollution ruined the roads, the water, even the farmland up there, which it really ruined the fence.
Wow.
Not much got up into the barn part, but
Good observations.
even got a tear in it.
Oh my goodness.
And now I just punched another one.
Oh, thank you, the Joneses. Jet, go ahead. Thanks, buddy.
I liked my city too much. I couldn't spray it.
Oh.
That happens. Well, that just goes to show, right? If you love where you live, you got to take care of it.
Yep. I also added some nice sidewalks to the building.
Oh, good. Some people access. Awesome. Thanks, Jet.
Good job, Jeff.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, I know our time's kind of running out, but I wanted to kind of go over what we just talked about a little bit. But first, I wanted to show you this really quick clip, which to me is very eye-opening when you think about what we're talking about with what can get into the water when it rains. What happens when it rains really hard here in Albuquerque, and how much of that pollution probably gets moved through water. So I'm gonna try to play this video, but turn the sound off. Let's see if, I'm not quite sure if I can control it. There we go. These are just visuals for you. This is here in Albuquerque, Rio Rancho in New Mexico. I'm sorry, in New Mexico. So look how much water is flowing when it rains really hard. Lots of erosion is happening. This guy's home got flooded. And in a minute, they're gonna show the place where the levees broke, like these barriers. We have all these barriers. Here's a good picture where the barrier broke and all that water went into a neighborhood. That's a lot of water moving through our city, right? For a place that doesn't get a lot of rain all the time, and when we get big monsoon storms like in the summer, we can experience a lot of flooding, which has a lot of impacts on our community. But if we think about what can get into that water, and it's moving so fast, where do you think all that flood water eventually ends up? This is Santa Fe, I think, this picture that they're showing us now. So most of that water is gonna move, nope. We're gonna just go back to here. Back into our river. So the kind of key things, can we maybe try to think of a few things that could be important for us to do to protect our water source from getting polluted? So if we're thinking about people who have dogs, what can people who have dogs do? Raise your hand. If they have a pet that walks around outside and poops outside, what can they do?
Jet?
I see lots of hands. Benjamin?
Actually,
Do you have an idea?
the poop.
Can you unmute yourself?
You can unmute him.
I could, I wasn't.
Now he's muted, sorry. What can you do if you have a dog?
I'm trying to unmute you, Benjamin, but I think you have to unmute yourself, buddy.
No.
There you go.
It's okay. Yeah. So I'll just go over them really quick. So a couple great things that we can do if we have pets. We can pick up our dog's poop, right? So it doesn't get into our water source. Nod heads if you hear me. If your family has a car, it's great to wash it at a car wash instead of in our driveways or parking lots, because car washes make sure that water doesn't go into the storm drains, that it goes into the wastewater and gets cleaned, versus if you just wash your car on your driveway, a lot of that stuff just goes into our storm drains. And you know, we don't ever pour oils or chemicals into storm drains. Those are really important things too. So that's one way that we can protect our watershed when we live. That's a few ways that we can protect our watershed when we live in a city. It's different, you know, depending on where you live. But since we live on a place that has a lot of impermeable surfaces, right? Those hard pavements, that water is not going back down into the ground. It's moving across the land and taking stuff with it. So so maybe we can have just a few comments before we wrap this up. It looks like the Joneses has a big, nice hand raised.
There you go, buddy.
Don't bury your
Go ahead.
science equipment. Even though I have a science equipment of my own.
Oh, we're unmuted. We're muted.
I think he's
muted
unmuting
again.
himself.
I
I
have a
think
science
he-
equipment,
I can't hear you
and
either.
when you
Christina.
get one of those, make sure you don't bury the chemicals.
Oh, because you
Because
turned
they
your
can
volume
get,
up.
because
Oh.
someone buried the chemical
Silly.
in or somewhere, and now a whole bunch of people, my cousin and my mom's sister, I think, now live there because they thought no one would live there. And now a school's been built there, so never bury the chemicals,
Good.
no matter
point.
what, no matter what kind of chemicals they are.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jet has his hand up. Jet, go ahead.
My sister actually made a different city for me to do it with, and there's a lot of pollution going through the road, someone's backyard, and at the mall.
Mostly at the mall.
Mostly at the mall.
There's lots of pavement at those malls, right?
Yep. Keeps the water from going anywhere.
Good job, bud.
All right, I like it.
I know.
You did good.
Eli, good dance moves. Oh, Jet's dancing too. Ooh, so is the Jonases.
Well, maybe we should just dance it out to our final. Thank you for being here with
You
me.
guys do a dance party?
That was.
Can everybody say thank you to Miss Erin? She did such a good job and we learned so much. And thank you to her assistant.
Thank you,
Eli.
Miss Sarah.
Thank you.
He had to answer the phone. But
Thank you.
for having us.
Thank you, Miss Erin.
Thank you, Miss Erin. Miss Erin.
And thank you, Eli.
Have a good summer.
Thank you.
He's got the moves.
I know. Look at that, guys. Erin, you did so good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. That's a activity we do for our 3rd grade classes in a Royal Classroom, and it's an hour-long activity. Usually goes by really fast, so I'm glad we got to do it. All.
Not yet.
All right, I'm gonna sign off, but thanks for having me.
All right,
Bye.
bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good day. Bye, Jet. Bye, Eli. Bye, Benjamin.
Can we talk to Shem and Karen? Bye.
Bye.
Bye.